Twice in one day. I'm back. And I'm back for such thrilling news, Mike. I got to be honest with you. I'm so pumped to be back here talking about another huge Cincinnati Reds move. Mike, welcome in. How you doing today?
I'm doing good. I missed out on our JJ Bleday talk. I'm just so excited to get in and talk some Reds, even if it is only. Nick did say that there was going to be trades happening. He did say that, and
he warned us.
Boy, was he right.
Yeah, boy, was he right. You went out on a hike this morning. Is that what you said?
Yeah, we were out hiking. The weather's pretty good over in Central Ohio. So the whole family went on a little 2-mile hike, and yeah, it was great. And right in and out of service, right as the JJ Bleday thing happened. So I knew they made a move, but I couldn't tell who, because everything that I loaded was just like I knew. So that I could see that you guys were trying to go live, but I didn't even have a clue on what it was for. So it was one of those little. I guess I can say JJ Bleday was a little bit anticlimactic. Not as anticlimactic as I saw the Reds have made a trade for center fielder Dane Myers, but it was a good way to distract me from Georgia Tech beating BYU in the Pop-Tart Bowl, which is
there you go.
Which is going great for me right now.
You're a Georgia Tech alum. What do you mean
That's
distract you? Isn't that? Don't you want full attention to the Pop-Tart Bowl?
Well, it's halftime, so
Oh, okay. So you got.
Yeah, I got time. I got time to get my Reds takes off, and then I'll get back to the screen.
All right. Well, I'm sure you're refueling after your hike with some Omaha Steaks. Make sure you go to omahasteaks.com for their end of the season sale. 50% off site wide, plus get an extra $35 off with code Chatterbox. That's code Chatterbox for an extra $35 off your order. omahasteaks.com is a proud sponsor of Chatterbox Sports. All right, Mike, let's get into it. You kind of mentioned it there. The Reds acquiring Dane Myers from the Miami Marlins. In exchange, they send outfielder Ethan O'Donnell to Miami, or wherever Miami's AA affiliate is located, I guess. Look, I'm so underwhelmed in general with this Reds offseason that like this is just stacking up on top of it, right? Like I'm just waiting for something of like value to happen, and this move just tells me that they're going all in on a platoon in left field, and that platoon's going to be JJ Bleday and Dane Myers. And like after talks of Luis Robert, after talks of trying to go out and sign Kyle Schwarber, all these talks, we land with a mediocre platoon. Like, am I missing something here, Mike? Sell me on this.
Yeah,
make me excited.
Dane Myers, obviously coming from the Marlins. He originally was a AAA Rule 5 draftee. He got him from the Tigers, but he is somebody that can play all three positions, very similar to what you guys brought up with when talking about the JJ Bleday signing. He's actually played most of his time in center field, and in 2025 was a 3 outs above average in center field. But his big calling card is he hits left-handed pitching. Career against lefties, he's got a 297 average and 816 ops and a 126 WRC plus.
Now he's had ops. Who calls it an ops?
Some prospect guys, they'll call it ops. I listen to MLB Pipeline podcast, and that's what OPS. That's what I meant by ops.
Okay,
but yeah, 127 WRC plus against left-handed pitching, and I would imagine that is what they're bringing him in to do, whether it is to platoon in left or in center, which is very interesting. I think maybe that's a conversation we could have as well, because you're right. I could see I could see us barreling towards a JJ Bleday, Dane Myers platoon out in left field, which doesn't really get anyone excited. But I could also potentially see this potentially a platoon for TJ Friedl. Now, we know that Tito loves TJ Friedl and was willing to bat him first against lefties, even though the splits really weren't there. He just was basically good at getting infield bunt hits against lefties, and that was frankly it. So I don't know if that necessarily comes to fruition, but this is another guy with an MLB or a minor league option that also has a pretty good platoon side that could be used and be a good piece in the outfield in 2026. I'm not saying that this is, we're set. This was the last puzzle piece. The Reds are ready to go. Here we go. It's time to It's time to get ready for opening day. But I understand where this this trade happens in the same way, whereas you understand paying 1.4 million for JJ Bleday, right? This is a very mobile chess piece that you can put all through the outfield, can still send to the minors. Is somebody that you had to give up your 18th prospect. This is somebody that probably wasn't going to be a contributor to this team anytime soon, if at all. Ethan O'Donnell, he was a 6th-round pick from Virginia in 2023. So it's one of those things where you understand where this, where they're coming from with the value, I guess. But I think this move will make a little bit more sense when we get to the end of the offseason. I think whether there's got to be something else going, whether it's a trade brewing or something like that, whether it's for Luis Robert or maybe some other thing that includes sending Friedel or Will Benson somewhere else for something else. That's, to me, this is just a sign of further things to come.
Look, I hope you're right. I certainly hope that this is just a sign of things to come. And whether it's a trade of TJ Friedel, whether it's a trade of Spencer Steer, whether it's some other acquisition that moves the needle from an offensive standpoint, I'm ready for it, brother. I'm ready for it. I feel like we've been sitting here all offseason waiting for it. Nick showed this. I don't have the actual doc that he created, but Nick showed this Reds outfield depth earlier in our stream when we talked about JJ Bleday, and saw a tweet about it too. But it's just kind of funny. Like, you got TJ Friedel in center field, you got Noelvi Marte in right field, and then for left field / backup, you've got just 8 different like triple quad A guys, right? You've got JJ Bleday now along with Dane Myers, but then you've got Gavin Lux and Spencer Steer and Tyler Callahan and Hector Rodriguez and Blake Dunn and Will Benson and Reese Hines, and like the list goes on of just guys that like the Reds are hoping lands. And I think that's right now the difficult part for Reds fans, is that they're building a roster of hoping, right? Like, they hope that JJ Bleday can get back to 2024. They hope that Dane Myers can give them what he's been able to do against left-handed batting and or pitching in the past. Like, they're hoping that they can get the ceiling from guys like Blake Dunn or Reese Hines or whoever. But the truth of the matter is we saw in 2025, Tito Francona falls in love with some guy. He plays them every day, even though he doesn't deserve to play every single day. And the platoon that Nick Krall builds just kind of crumbles up to this wayside because Tito Francona fell in love with somebody that was meant to be a platoon bat. And so I'm sitting here just wondering, okay, well, hopefully they're going out and they're adding a DH or some sort of bat. Like I mentioned to you before we went live, maybe Reese Hoskins is the next move, and they go out and they add him as just a pure DH, and that kind of shores up. You've got Steer and Sal Stewart at first base. You've got whatever platoon you decide to do in the outfield. Maybe that's the move here. I don't know, but they cleared up the DFA Lyon Richardson, which probably not a big impact move, obviously, in order to make this happen. But just in general, it just feels underwhelming. And I think at the end of the day, I think Reds fans are sitting in a position of just kind of twiddling their thumbs, hoping and kind of poking as the meme is, just poking with a stick. Hey, do something, like anything. Just get me excited.
Yeah, I expect Lyon Richardson to probably pass through waivers and be able to come right back into and he's good pitching depth, had some flashes last year, but I don't see anyone looking at Lyon Richardson and seeing that there's upside worth a waiver claim there. But when it comes to that outfield that you pulled up, I think, yeah, you're right. There is a lot of hope that goes into it. But what's interesting is that if, and this is a big if we can convince, or if the front office can convince Tito to actually play to the platoon splits, I could see how there's a lot of, you can get some above average play if you're strict on these platoon splits to, out of players that don't cost very much, which is ultimately what Nick Krall is trying to do, right? And let's just say Dane Myers, last year, 119 WRC plus against left-handed pitching, 47 WRC plus against right-handed pitching. So, maybe this is Nick Krall being like, hey, this guy is so bad against right. Don't bat him against right-handed pitching. And I'm going to give you somebody whose splits are so drastic. And we saw this with Will Benson, right? Will Benson basically only got at-bats against right-handed pitching. It ultimately went out completely. He was absent for a couple months, even being on the big league club, it seemed like. But so I think that this part of this could be, this is somebody that you could maybe use off the bench, come in for defensive replacement, and maybe even be a part of a platoon, a strict platoon with people that, it's very clear your role is to hit against a left-handed starter. And then the moment a right-handed reliever comes in, we switch, and it is now JJ Bleday, or it is now Will Benson or something like that. So you're right. There is everyone's looking at this and be like, this can't be it. But in my mind, there's still something there if, and once again, this is a big if, but if you can get Tito to kind of play these platoons in a way that is, going to be beneficial for the majority of the time, playing strong side platoons.
Yeah, I just can't wait for him to fall in love with Dane Myers' defensive ability and ends up playing him every day as he struggles his way to a 200 batting average and, maybe he hits 10 home runs on the year. I don't know, but yeah, we'll break it all down more. But first, we're going to give a shout out to our sponsors, DSC. DSC Deep South Commodities is a leader in renewable commodities for biofuel production, specializing in used cooking oil collection, aggregation, and sales. Visit www.deepsouthcommodities.com for more information. Thanks as always to our friends at DSC. And as always, we want to remind you this holiday season that you can call or text 988 anytime, day or night. The 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline is a place to get support for anything related to mental health. Whether it's an immediate crisis, simply wanting to find out how to connect with care, or anything in between. It's a 100% confidential, secure, and anonymous way to reach out for help when you don't know where else to turn. To connect, call or text 988 or visit mantherapy.org to get help. It's okay not to be okay. All right, Mike, we talked a little bit about this here on the front half, and I do want to dive into it a little bit more, and that is, what is this signaling, right? Was it a signing, an acquisition via trade, something else? What is this really all adding up to? Because as you and myself and many others have said, this can't be it, right? Like, you can't look at this roster and say, all right, we're ready to go. Sal Stewart or Spencer Steer is going to DH every day. The other one's going to play first base. We got a left field platoon of JJ Bleday and Dane Myers. TJ Friedel's our center fielder every day. And, oh, yeah, right field's going to be Noelvi Marte every day. And I like it. Don't get me wrong. TJ Friedel's fine. I'm high on Noelvi Marte. We all know that. It would be an okay platoon in left field, like Dane Myers and JJ Bleday, but like, nothing about that roster as it sits here today gets me any more excited than I was in 2025, or gives me any more hope that they can make an advance in the playoffs than they could in 2025. And so I ask you, Mike, is it TJ Friedel? Is it Spencer Steer? Is it signing a DH like Rhys Hoskins or somebody else? What is your gut telling you is next for the Cincinnati Reds?
Yeah, and I just want to be clear. I feel like I've been very high on Dane Myers, but I think Dane Myers is great as a bench piece, right? Somebody you can move around, play for defense, and hit against left-handed pitching. If Dane Myers is out there starting in left field against Garrett Crochet on opening day, I think we have problems. So that is, I just want that my stance to be clear on how we have, and how I feel about this trade acquisition here. But to your question, I think that this, I think I've seen a lot of people being like, well, this maybe spells the end for Will Benson. I think that maybe TJ Friedel is even more, this may be foreboding for something that happens with TJ Friedel. Whether it be in a trade, actually probably in a trade, I doubt that they would cut TJ Friedel. But I was thinking is like, okay, so is TJ Friedel potentially in a potential Luis Robert trade? Is he, or, are they potentially willing to move him for the other team who's interested in center field depth in the Luis Robert trade, which would be the Mets, right? So I was thinking is like, okay, the Mets just lost Brandon Nimmo and Jeff McNeil, two of their longtime guys that have been manning center field out there. This brings in for them somebody who is pretty good defensively, who has long track record and will be able to, hold things down and not just hand it over to the young guy. So what does that mean then, right? Does that mean that we're potentially in for somebody like a Mark Vientos, a young controllable hitter? Is there pitching also involved? I'm not sure what, if TJ Friedel for Mark Vientos is something I would imagine the Reds probably would have to,
You'd
sweeten the
have to
deal
include
with
one
pitching.
of their young arms too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
or something like that in order to get that. And we saw with the Mets, that's kind of what happened right there. They just ran out of pitching. Everybody got injured. Your Frankie Montoses, your Sean Manaeas all got injured at the end of the year, and they just kind of limped to the finish line. So I would imagine there's something like that. And the market for TJ Friedel is probably not nothing. Right? This is a guy that is reliably going to give you pretty good defense out there. Had a little bit of a down year last year, but still, has a pretty high on base comparatively. So I don't think he should be batting first against left-handed pitching. But if he were to go, I can see a team being like, well, if we deploy this guy correctly, we can get a lot of value out of somebody like a TJ Friedel. So I could see them moving him there. And then obviously Will Benson, right? You guys talked about the potential in and out of favor with Tito Francona. There's been nothing reported about that, but it seems clear from, his departure from Cleveland. And then now, what happened last year in Cincinnati, that at best, Terry Francona is not the biggest fan of the hitter profile that is Will Benson. That's somebody that swings and misses a lot, even though it's hard contact, even though he can offer defensive upside at more than one position. It's been documented how we feel about this whole situation, but I would imagine at least one of those two, TJ Friedel, Will Benson, maybe both, are not on this team when it comes to opening day, whether it's a trade or something like that.
Well, the big piece of it, obviously, that goes into this conversation is payroll, right? And that's been the whole conversation around Luis Robert. That's been the whole conversation around any signing that they make this offseason. And as it sits today, the 2025 payroll was around $112 million. And they sit here today with the projected payroll, including arbitration salaries, at $111 million. So for Nick Kroll telling us that their payroll is going to be about the same, that means they're either moving some of the payroll that's projected to be on the books for 2026, whether it be a Brady Singer, a Gavin Lux. I've been a proponent of even like a Jose Trevino or Tyler Stevenson potentially being on the block. If they're not going to get an extension done with Stevenson, certainly would make sense to try and move him, but I don't know. But one way or another, they have to figure out a way to free up some payroll if they're going to go out and try and get someone else. This is all according to Fangraphs, of course, so it's not perfect, and certainly some of it could be, hit or miss by a couple bucks. But like, you're still talking about guys like Brady Singer, who's expected to go out and earn somewhere between $12 and $14 million in arbitration. You went out and signed Emilio Pagan to a 2-year, $20 million contract. TJ Friedel's only due, I think I saw $3.5 million. Spencer Steer, $4 million. Gavin Lux, somewhere in the $5 million range. Like, they don't have any like big pieces to offload. So is it possible that multiple pieces could be going out in some sort of trade to bring in someone that is ultimately a more affordable piece to then be able to go out and sign a big bat? I don't know. Maybe you package a Gavin Lux, a TJ Friedel, or Brady Singer, or two or more of those in a package to free up $15+ million. And then you go out and you sign someone like a Rhys Hoskins or otherwise. So, I don't know. Like, it just, between Tyler Stevenson making a projected $7 million, Jose Trevino's contracted at just under $6 million. It just feels like somewhere they're going to have to free up some money. And just quite frankly, there's nobody on the roster outside of Brady Singer that feels like a piece that actually could make a dent in that budget. And so it's either got to be Brady Singer or multiple pieces.
Right. And according to MLB trade rumors, the projection for TJ Friedel is 4.9 mil, for Spencer Steers 4.5 mil, and Gavin Lux is 5 mil. So I think the reasons you just laid out there are why I think a lot of people in Reds country expect there to be some major league trade going on, because you're right. I think that even Nick Kroll would agree that this roster right now is not complete. It's not something that they are looking to build. So by trading away somebody like that to hopefully bring in somebody better, to free up space to be able to sign somebody like a Rhys Hoskins or something like that, I think is probably what we see. That's why I said I think Dane Myers, this in a vacuum, this looks silly, right? It's just like, cool, you just brought a quad A guy onto your team to fight for a roster spot that probably isn't going to add that much value to. But we saw last year that part of why there certain people played in certain positions was because he didn't have, or Terry Francona didn't have trust for people to play in certain positions, specifically in the outfield. So what this does is it does bring flexibility to have a backup. Remember, Garrett Hampson was on the team basically because he gave you outfield flexibility last year. Like, he was a month on the Reds, providing absolutely nothing except for, helping Terry Francona sleep at night, knowing that if push comes to shove, he could send somebody on the outfield that won't embarrass themselves. So like, is Myers an upgrade from that? Yes. But I think in the grand scheme of this year, when they make a trade for somebody like Friedel or Steer or Lux or somebody like that, freeing up room to potentially add more, I think it will make a little bit more sense. And in the grand scheme of this offseason. But you're right. It does seem like we're, let's just hope that we haven't struck out and this is the best they can do. That's for sure. That I just really hope that that's not the case.
Yeah, I know a lot of people were wondering what this means for the Luis Robert market and if the Reds are out. If this is their answer to them being out of Luis Robert, like, we got bigger problems on our hands than that, right? So,
right.
Certainly possible, but I mean, man, that's rough. I'll ask you the same question that I asked our Discord after this move was made, Mike. Sitting here today on December 27th, is the Cincinnati Reds roster better, worse, or the same than it was on October 1st when they got eliminated from the playoffs?
All right. So October 1st when they got eliminated. So the losses are Andujar, Hayes, right? From basically those are the only bats that
Andujar and Hayes. Yep.
Yeah. And then, So offensively, I'm not sure that what they've done so far is enough to, bring back what they've lost offensively. So I would say, besides hoping for a McLean bounce back or hoping for Steer to, not be injured for the first half of the year, then I'd say no. Offensively, I don't think that they're better. Now, pitching wise, I think that, not having Nick Martinez and getting a full season of Chase Burns and potentially Rhett Lauder, like, to me, that is a trade-off that I'd say the pitching's right about where, I feel good about that and still feel pretty, about the same there. But I think offensively, they haven't done enough yet to get ourselves even back to that level. Now, I don't think they're done, but, I'd say probably not. I don't think this is a team that, if they started opening day tomorrow, would be a better team than what barely made the playoffs last year.
Yeah. I told them the same thing. I'll tell you, like, if we're comparing this to opening day of 2025, I'll give a slight nod, right? Like, I think Sal Stewart's an improvement. I think the platoon that they're putting out there is probably better than the platoon that they started 2025 with. I think Jacob Hurtubise and like Rhys Hines was your left field platoon at the start of 2025, if I'm remembering correctly, right? So like, if we're talking strictly, Brian Hayes is an upgrade for sure. Then yeah, absolutely, you can sell me that we are a better team today than we were on March 31st or whatever of 2025. But if you will look in strictly at the roster that they ended the season with, that got eliminated by the Dodgers in two games that weren't particularly close, a team that everybody in Cincinnati is hoping can be built up to be a contender to at least advance in the playoffs for the first time in forever. I can't honestly sit here today and say that I feel more confident now that this is a better Cincinnati Reds team than I did at the end of 2025. I think the pitching will continue to be great. But offensively, I just struggle to see how they're going to win ball games. And that ultimately becomes the question. And so from my perspective, and a lot of people in the chat are saying this, and I'm reserving my grade for the overall offseason until we get to opening day, really. But there has to be more. And that's ultimately what this comes down to, Mike, is that if this is it, the Reds are doomed. And if they have more in their back pocket, then I certainly look forward to being live with you and Nick and Trace to talk about it, because we know Trace will come out of his cave if we have a big signing to come in and be all jacked up about it. But for now, I just don't see it. It doesn't get me excited.
Yeah, it's hard to argue with you. And that's why I feel like they're not done. There's been too much smoke about what they're trying to do. And when it comes to something like take, for example, the Brady Singer, Jonathan India trade last year, right? Something that objectively worked out for the Reds. And I don't think anyone really had any inkling of that going down. So I am holding out hope. I know we've heard smoke about the Luis Robert trade. I would imagine that's probably coming from the White Sox, who's trying to be like, hey, somebody is trying to trade for Luis Robert. Does anyone want to give us more? Right? That feels like that's strictly the White Sox trying to make the price go higher. I can imagine that there is talks that we don't even know about of some of these players that we mentioned trying to make the Reds better. Now, maybe I'm giving Nick Krall too much credit because ultimately it's what can you deliver by opening day? But yeah, I think you're right. This team isn't better than it was at the beginning of the playoffs last year. And if this is where we stand, it's going to be a lot of hoping and praying. Just that Sal Stewart, Matt McClain, Noel Marte all just take a huge leap. And that's, you can't build an offseason just hoping that everyone is going to take a huge leap.
And while we were live, we got a couple quotes and insights from JJ Bleday, the Reds signing earlier today, signed a $1.4 million contract. Our friend Charlie Goldsmith putting out a couple quotes today from JJ Bleday. I'll get your live unsolicited reaction to this since you haven't seen it, I assume. We'll start with just his struggles in 2025. He said it was a little bit physical, a little bit of mental, definitely pressed to do more and get results, not up to my standards. I was disappointed, but I learned a lot about myself and what I had to do. I was able to finish the season strong. The main thing is getting back to the fluidity in my swing and staying in the middle of the field. I'm doing a lot more randomized BP sessions and game-like scenarios. Now, Nick and I talked about the fact that he was a heavy pull, heavy fly ball hitter in 2025, and that's a profile that I think Nick Krall probably liked about JJ Bleday. What do you think about him specifically saying that he's trying to stay in the middle of the field as he's working through his offseason?
Well, I think he knows exactly what Chris Valleca wants to hear. But I've been combing through some 2024 Bleday highlights just because trying to see, what was this guy doing that was, that was so different, or I guess changed into 2025. And, he does spray the ball more so than somebody, at least power wise. You saw stuff going to it's not like a TJ Friedel who all of his home runs are to right field. Right. But I would imagine too that it's I know it's still, I don't know. We've kind of maybe criticized this way of thinking, but I think this is exactly what Nick Krall is trying to do to buy cheap power. And that is simply get a line drive guy that didn't have a lot of home runs, but that you think are probably going to turn into home runs at Great American Ballpark. And I know we can talk about, we've criticized that in the past, but I think in his mind, he's like, we can't afford Kyle Schwarber power, so we have to try to afford JJ Bleday power that, was in the huge ballpark in Oakland in 2024, had 20 home runs, but if his home park would have been in Cincinnati, would have had 31 home runs. So I think that is how they're trying to play the game. Let's hope that gamble works. Let's hope this gamble is more Austin Hayes and less Will Myers. But at the end of the day, in my opinion, $1.4 million is, less. That's like Scott Barlow money. To me, that is, that's throw a dartboard at a reliever type thing. So, I'm happy to bring him in there. I think I mentioned to to Nick when we were talking about him before, that I could totally see him being like in June. He's like somebody who we're talking about, I can't believe what a steal we got him for, or he's not even on the team anymore. Like that is his,
Yeah.
he's got this huge wide range of outcomes. And at $1.4 million, I don't think anybody would be married to him. And it would just be like, okay, we'll move on if he was not performing.
Let's break it down real quick. I mean, let's be honest with this whole thing. The Reds made 2 moves today, and their total investment on the 2 players is going to be less than $2.2 million. Like,
right.
Realistically, JJ Bleday is a $1.4 million signing. Dane Myers is still pre-arb, so he's going to be making less than $1 million himself. Like,
or whatever.
We're talking 1.3 million maybe, or 2.3 million maybe total for the 2. So I'm not overly concerned about the money, but when you've got such a tight budget that the Reds already have, allegedly, without any other pending moves, allegedly, then it leaves you in a position where you've got to break down every single option. And that's where you get to the position like this, where you're having a $2.2 million platoon in left field as your everyday starters. He also talked about working on his defense this winter. This is Bleday talking to the media earlier today. Main thing for me is the speed and first step in the outfield type stuff. I've done a few things different with my training, more quick twitch type things rather than straight powerlifting. Feel like I already have the strength. How can we get to that speed up as quick as we can? I take a lot of pride in my defense. Last year didn't go as planned. I've been doing a lot more pop-ups, grounders, and first step stuff. Nothing really there. He's not being brought on as a defender. We know that he's a subpar defender. He's being brought on for hopefully his bat from the left side of the plate.
Yeah, I mean, what this screams to me is, post-hype sleeper, high draft pick guy that got a wake-up call when he was DFA'd, right? I know he'd already been traded, but this dude was like the number 5 pick in the draft. He was very highly regarded, and then all of a sudden he finds himself DFA'd, no one even claiming you off of waivers. So hopefully that means, that's a wake-up call. That's something that he's like, okay, I got to change something about this. We've seen that many times. Kyle Schwarber was somebody that was let go and then, signed to a deal and proved everyone wrong after that. So it's just like, it's one of those things where hopefully we're able to get rejuvenated and, somebody who's obviously willing to change what they're doing to change his skill set to be able to be more, somebody more willing to be kept on a major league roster. So hopefully that, we get bounced back JJ Bleday, and that would be awesome. And once again, hope it shouldn't be a strategy, but it's not hard to squint and see how maybe you might be able to catch lightning in a bottle with a $1.3 million signing.
Yeah. Real quick, final quote from Charlie on the Reds' message to JJ Bleday. Quote, okay. They were looking for a corner guy. We're not going to just hand you the spot. You've got to earn it. That was still enough for me to hear them out and want to come here. Yeah, let's go sign JJ Bleday as our everyday left fielder instead of any of the other available players on the market. But hey, here we are.
Let's hope not. I wonder if the Dane Myers JJ Bleday happens, Platoon actually happens and is actually deployed. I'd be interested to look back if we do have to go through a whole season of that and look at like overall production of that platoon versus the overall production of an Austin Hayes, right? Because Austin Hayes obviously hit left-handed pitching pretty well, but had his levels of struggles as well. So I'd be interested to see how those compare, the platoon versus to one player. But I think we both can agree that that's not nearly good enough for what we were expecting from a playoff team, somebody that you wanted to take the next step, try to, compete for the division, and definitely remake the playoffs again. And if this is where they stand, I can't imagine anybody's happy about that.
All right, wrapping up everything. If you're just joining, Cincinnati Reds trade for center fielder, we'll call him an outfielder. Dane Myers from the Miami Marlins, send AA prospect Ethan O'Donnell back to the Marlins in return. Dane Myers expected to be, at least as of right now, platoon bat with JJ Bleday, who the Reds signed earlier in the day from left field. We'll see what happens. Ultimately, Mike and I both agree. Hopefully there's more moves coming, and these are both just depth moves. But as of right now, your left field platoon for opening day, JJ Bleday, Dane Myers. Hope you guys are ready. For Mike Hart, I'm Craig Sandlin. This has been Chatterbox Reds. Make sure you tune in to Chatterbox Bengals tomorrow, starting at 12:30 p.m. Eastern. We'll be live throughout the entire game. And as always, Chatterbox Bearcats, the Flying Line podcast, and of course, all week long, 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. right here on Chatterbox Sports is Off the Bench with Reed Mouse and the Stone Shields Show. Tongue twister there, Mike. I got it all out nonetheless. Any final thoughts, Mike?
No, I just hope that we're back on again tomorrow.
Well, let's hope that we're back on tomorrow with something a little bit more exciting than what we're here for today. Twice now. JJ Bleday, Dane Myers, now officially Reds. We'll see you next time. If we don't talk to you again, Happy New Year. Happy holidays. Hope you all had a great one. We'll talk to you soon.